The roar of engines shattered the morning calm of Riverside Market in Chicago. Three gleaming black SUVs rolled slowly down the narrow street, drawing every eye. At Maria's humble taco stand, just a weathered cart, two coolers, and a faded umbrella. The vehicles came to a stop. A man in an expensive navy suit stepped out. His polished shoes caught the sunlight as he walked directly toward Maria, who stood frozen, wooden spoon trembling in her stained hands. "Please," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Who is Maria, the owner of this food cart?" Maria's heart hammered. I am." The man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for feeding my mother every single day." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Before anyone could speak, an elderly voice cracked from behind. "Whose mother?" Everyone turned. It was Ruth, the homeless widow who came here daily for meals. The billionaire turned, and when his eyes met Ruth's, he dropped to his knees right there in the dirt. "Mama," he whispered, "I'm alive. I survived." Ruth's plate slipped from her hands as her knees buckled, and she collapsed unconscious to the ground. Clapperboard if you're enjoying this story of kindness and unexpected blessings. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our inspiring stories. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Folded hands. Maria Torres had run her taco cart on Riverside Market Street for 8 years. Each morning at 5, she pushed the heavy cart from her tiny apartment 3 blocks away, her 15-year-old daughter Sophia helping with the coolers of ingredients. The cart wasn't much: dented metal sides, a propane stove that sometimes refused to light, and an umbrella with more holes than fabric. But it was theirs, and it fed them. 6 months ago, Ruth had appeared. An elderly black woman, thin as a reed, wearing layers of worn clothing despite the Chicago heat. She never asked for food directly, just stood nearby, watching people eat with hollow, hungry eyes. The first day Maria saw her, something squeezed in her chest. She remembered being hungry once, years ago when Sophia was a baby and her husband Carlos had just disappeared. She remembered the shame of needing help. Without a word, Maria had filled a container with rice, beans, and chicken tacos, then walked it over to Ruth. Ruth's eyes had widened. I don't have money. I didn't ask for any," Maria said softly. From that day forward, Ruth came every morning at 9. Maria always had a hot meal waiting. They rarely spoke much. Ruth seemed wrapped in her own private grief, but slowly, a quiet companionship formed. Sophia adored Ruth, calling her Grandma Ruth within weeks. Ruth would help wipe down tables when her strength allowed, or simply sit on the plastic chair and keep them company. Other vendors noticed. Some praised Maria's kindness. Others muttered that she was foolish, giving away food she could sell. Maria's neighbor, Mrs. Chun, who sold vegetables 2 carts down, often shook her head. "You barely make enough for yourself and Sophia. Why feed strangers?" "She's not a stranger anymore," Maria would reply simply. The truth was, Maria and Sophia lived on the edge themselves. Their one-room apartment had a leaky ceiling. Sophia's school uniform was patched and repatched. Medical bills from Sophia's childhood asthma still sat unpaid in a drawer. But somehow, there was always enough for 3 meals instead of 2. Ruth never spoke of her past, but sometimes Maria caught her staring into the distance with such profound sadness that it hurt to witness. Once, Ruth whispered, "I had a son once. A beautiful boy. He was everything." "What happened?" Maria asked gently. Ruth's eyes had filled. "He died 20 years ago. Him and his father both in one terrible day." Maria had reached over and squeezed her hand. No more words were needed. The morning the SUVs arrived started like any other. Maria was preparing her signature salsa, Sophia was setting out the plastic chairs, and Ruth was making her slow way down the street toward them. Then came the sound, deep, powerful engines that didn't belong in their working-class neighborhood. Sophia saw them first. "Mama, look." 3 massive black SUVs, the kind that carried celebrities or politicians, were approaching. People stopped mid-step. Conversations died. Even the usual traffic noise seemed to hush. The vehicles parked directly in front of Maria's cart. so close she could have reached out and touched them. A door opened. A tall man emerged, and the morning sun seemed to catch every expensive detail. The perfectly tailored suit, the gleaming watch, the confident bearing of someone who owned boardrooms and commanded respect. But it was his face that struck Maria. There was vulnerability there, raw emotion barely contained. Two security guards flanked him as he walked toward her cart with purpose. Maria's mouth went dry. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she violated some permit? Was she in trouble? Was this about Sophia? The man stopped directly in front of her. Up close, she could see his hands trembling slightly. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Please, who is Maria, the owner of this food cart?" The world seemed to tilt. Behind her, Sophia gasped. Somewhere, a car horn honked in the distance. Maria swallowed hard and raised a shaking hand. I am Maria." The man's shoulders sagged with relief, and Maria saw tears gathering in his eyes. A billionaire, because that's clearly what he was, standing before her humble taco cart, looking like he might break down at any moment. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you for taking in my mother and feeding her every single day." The words hung in the air. Maria's mind struggled to process them. Mother? Whose mother? The crowd that had gathered began whispering urgently. Sophia grabbed her mother's arm. "Mama, what's he talking about?" Before Maria could respond, a voice came from behind them. Soft, confused, frightened. Whose mother?" Everyone turned. Ruth stood there, her usual plastic bag of belongings clutched to her chest. Her weathered face had gone pale. The container of food Maria had prepared for her that morning slipped from her fingers. The billionaire turned slowly, as if moving through water. When his eyes locked on Ruth's face, every muscle in his body went rigid. For 3 heartbeats, no one breathed. Then the impossible happened. This man in his expensive suit, this person who commanded respect and power, dropped to his knees right there on the dusty Chicago street. Tears streamed down his face. "Mama," he whispered, "it's me. It's David. I'm not dead. I survived." A sound escaped Ruth's throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Her bag fell. Her hands flew to her chest. "No," she breathed. "No, you died. You and your father. 20 years ago. We buried." "An empty coffin," David said, his voice breaking. "I know. But Mama, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm your son." Ruth took one stumbling step forward, then another. Her whole body was shaking. "David? My David." "Yes, Mama." Ruth's knees buckled. Her eyes rolled back. And before anyone could catch her, she collapsed. "Ruth!" Maria screamed, rushing forward. David was faster. He caught his mother before she hit the ground, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. "Mama, no, please. Stay with me." Sophia ran to Maria's cart, grabbed a bottle of water with shaking hands. The security guards immediately pulled out phones, barking orders. "Ambulance is 3 minutes out," one reported crisply. David gently laid Ruth down, his hand supporting her head. "Please wake up, Mama. Please. I just found you." Maria knelt beside them, her professional instincts kicking in despite her shock. She'd seen people faint before. "Give her air," she said firmly. Everyone stepped back. The crowd obeyed, forming a respectful circle. Sophia handed over the water, and Maria dampened a napkin, pressing it gently to Ruth's forehead. "Ruth, honey, can you hear me? It's Maria." For terrible seconds, nothing. Then Ruth's eyelids fluttered. A small gasp escaped her lips. "Mama." David's voice was raw with hope and fear. Ruth's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then they landed on David's face hovering above her, and fresh tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. You're real," she whispered. "I'm real, Mama. I'm here." Ruth lifted a trembling hand and touched his face, her fingers tracing his features like she was memorizing them. "My son. My beautiful son." "Yes, Mama. But how?" Ruth's voice was barely audible. "They said you were dead. You and your father. The police found your father's body. They said you died too, in the attack. We had a funeral." David's face twisted with pain. "I survived, Mama. Barely. I was in a coma for months. When I woke up, I didn't remember anything. Not my name, not you, nothing. The distant wail of a siren grew louder. An ambulance was approaching. Don't try to talk, Maria said gently to Ruth. Help is coming. But Ruth gripped David's hand with surprising strength. 20 years, she whispered. I mourned you for 20 years. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. The ambulance pulled up, and paramedics rushed over with a stretcher and equipment. But David refused to let go of his mother's hand. Sir, we need to check her vital signs, one paramedic said respectfully. I'm going with her, David stated. It wasn't a question. Of course, sir. As they carefully loaded Ruth onto the stretcher, David turned to Maria. His eyes were red, but there was fierce gratitude there. You, he said. You kept her alive. You gave her hope when she had nothing. Maria shook her head, overwhelmed. I gave her food. You gave her more than food. You gave her dignity. David swallowed hard. Please, come with us to the hospital. Both of you. This isn't over. Before Maria could respond, the paramedics were moving. David climbed into the ambulance. One of his security guards approached Maria. Ma'am, if you'll come with me, we'll take you to the hospital. Maria looked at Sophia, who nodded eagerly. We have to go, Mama. The private hospital was unlike anything Maria had ever seen. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Staff in crisp uniforms moved with quiet efficiency. The air smelled of lavender instead of antiseptic. Maria felt acutely aware of her stained apron, her worn shoes, her hands that still smelled of cilantro and lime. Sophia clutched her arm, eyes wide as they followed David's security guard through the pristine hallways. They were led to a private waiting room with leather couches and a coffee service that looked more expensive than Maria's monthly rent. Please sit, the guard said politely. Mr. Chun will come speak with you shortly. Mr. Chun, David's last name. 20 years ago, Ruth had been Ruth Chun. Sophia sat carefully on the edge of a couch, afraid to touch anything. Mama, this is like a palace. Maria nodded, unable to speak. Her mind was still spinning. Ruth had a son, a billionaire son, and he'd been searching for her. 20 minutes later, David entered the room. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves. He looked exhausted but relieved. She's stable, he said immediately. The doctors say she fainted from emotional shock. Her blood pressure spiked, but she's resting now. Thank God, Maria breathed. David sat down across from them, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. For a moment, he just looked at Maria, his expression unreadable. I need to explain, he said finally. All of it. Maria nodded slowly. David took a deep breath. 20 years ago, my father and I were driving to a business meeting. I was 17. We were ambushed by armed robbers on a highway outside the city. They shot my father first. He died instantly. Then they shot me and left us both for dead. Sophia gasped. Maria reached for her daughter's hand. A passerby found me barely breathing, David continued. They got me to a hospital, but I was in a coma for 4 months. When I woke up, I had no memory, no ID, nothing. The hospital listed me as a John Doe. How did you survive? Maria asked softly. A social worker at the hospital, James Morrison, took an interest in my case. When no one claimed me after 6 months, he adopted me. Gave me a new name, David Morrison. He raised me, put me through business school, helped me build my company. Did you ever remember? David nodded slowly. Pieces came back over the years. Fragments. A woman's voice singing. The smell of specific food. A house with blue shutters. But never enough to find my way home. Never enough to remember my real name or where I came from. He paused, his hands clenching. 3 months ago, I was in Chicago for business. An elderly man approached me at a restaurant. He said I looked exactly like someone he once knew, a man named Robert Chun who died 20 years ago in a robbery. Maria's breath caught. He told me Robert had a wife and son, that they died together. But he said the wife, Ruth, was still alive, that she'd become homeless after losing everything. So you searched for her, Sophia whispered. I hired private investigators. It took weeks. They tracked her through shelters, soup kitchens, places where the homeless gathered. And finally, Someone told them about a food cart on Riverside Market where a kind woman fed a homeless widow named Ruth every single day. David's eyes locked on Maria's. You. They told me about you. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. When I saw her this morning, standing behind you, I knew, David continued, his voice thick. I knew she was my mother. 20 years disappeared in an instant. Everything came back. Her face, her voice, the way she used to hum while cooking. Everything. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Finally, Maria found her voice. What happens now? David straightened, and suddenly he looked every inch the powerful businessman. Now, everything changes. For my mother. For you. For your daughter. What do you mean? My mother has been homeless because I wasn't there to take care of her. That's my failure. But you, his voice intensified. You did what I couldn't. You saw a human being who needed help, and you helped her. Every single day, asking nothing in return. I didn't do it for a reward, Maria said quickly. I know. That's exactly why you deserve one. David pulled out his phone and showed her a document. This is the deed to a property on Riverside Market. 2,000 square feet. Perfect location. Maria stared at the screen, not understanding. I'm building you a restaurant, David said simply. A real one. Professional kitchen. Seating for 50. Your name on the sign. Maria's Place. Construction starts tomorrow. The room spun. Sophia shrieked and covered her mouth. No, Maria whispered. That's too much. I can't accept. And David continued as if she hadn't spoken. I'm setting up a college fund for Sophia. Full ride. Any school she wants. Pre-med track. Sophia burst into tears. Pre-med? I want to be a doctor, but we could never afford. Now you can, David said gently. Maria couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Maria sat in stunned silence, her mind unable to process what David had just offered. A restaurant. Sophia's education. It was more than she'd ever dreamed possible. I don't understand, she finally managed. Why so much? I just gave her food. David leaned back, his expression softening. Because you didn't just give her food, Maria. You gave her dignity. You made her feel human again when the world had forgotten her. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos, then turned the screen toward them. It showed a large house with blue shutters, the house from his fragmented memories. This was our home. My father owned a small manufacturing business. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, happy. His voice grew distant. After the attack, the police told my mother both of us were dead. She had no other family, no support system. What happened to her? Sophia asked quietly. The business collapsed without my father. Creditors came. Within a year, she lost the house, lost everything. She tried to work, but grief destroyed her. Depression, anxiety. She couldn't hold jobs. Eventually, she ended up on the streets. Maria's heart clenched. For 20 years, David nodded, pain etched across his face. My investigators found records. Shelter stays, hospital visits for malnutrition, police reports when she was moved from public spaces. She survived 2 Chicago winters sleeping under bridges. Oh, Ruth, Maria whispered. When I saw her this morning, she weighed 98 pounds. The doctors say she's severely malnourished. She has pneumonia scars on her lungs. Her teeth are damaged from years without dental care. David's voice cracked. This is what happened to my mother while I was building a business empire, living in a penthouse, not even knowing she existed. The guilt in his eyes was devastating. That's not your fault, Maria said firmly. You lost your memory. You didn't abandon her. My head knows that. My heart feels different. David looked at her intently. But you, Maria, for 6 months, you fed her. You talked to her. You treated her like family. You did what I couldn't. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Mr. Chun, your mother is awake and asking for you. And for Maria, they all stood immediately. David gestured for Maria and Sophia to follow. Ruth's private room was spacious and filled with flowers. David must have ordered them immediately. Ruth lay propped up on pillows and four in her arm, but her eyes were clear and bright. "Maria," she said, her voice stronger than before. "My dear girl." Maria rushed to her bedside and took her hand carefully. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dreaming and don't want to wake up." Ruth smiled, tears on her cheeks. "My son, my David, he's alive." David stood on the other side of the bed, his hand covering his mother's. "I'm here, Mama. I'm not going anywhere ever again." Ruth turned to him. "Tell me everything. I need to understand what happened." For the next hour, David recounted his story in detail. The attack, the coma, the memory loss, his adoption by James Morrison, building his business from nothing into a tech empire worth billions. The recent fragments of memory that led him to search for his past. Ruth listened, occasionally gasping or crying, but never interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Your father would be so proud," she finally said. "You survived. You thrived. You became everything he dreamed you could be." "I should have found you sooner," David said hoarsely. "Hush. You found me when you were meant to." Ruth squeezed his hand, then turned to Maria. "And this angel, this beautiful soul who kept me alive." Maria shook her head. "I didn't do anything special." "You did everything special," Ruth insisted. "Do you know how many people walk past me every day? Thousands. Some spit on me. Some told me to get a job. Some acted like I was invisible. But you," her voice broke. "You saw me. You fed me. You called me by name. You invited me to sit at your cart like I belonged there." Sophia had tears streaming down her face. Even the stoic doctor standing by the door looked moved. "Maria," Ruth continued, "you didn't save just my body. You saved my will to live. There were mornings I didn't want to get up, but I knew you'd be there with a warm meal and a kind word. That's what kept me going." David's jaw tightened with emotion. "Which is why," he said quietly, "everything I'm doing for you isn't charity. It's justice. It's the universe correcting itself." "When does construction start?" Sophia asked, unable to contain her excitement. David checked his phone. "The crew is already clearing the lot. Permits are approved. Money moves quickly when you know the right people. Foundation goes in tomorrow. We're looking at a 6-week timeline for completion." Maria's head spun. 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, she'd have an actual restaurant. "And there's something else," David added. Maria wasn't sure she could handle anything else. David pulled a folder from his briefcase and hesitated before opening it. His expression was serious, almost troubled. "When my investigators were searching for my mother, they didn't just look for Ruth Chun. They looked into everyone connected to her. Standard procedure to verify identities and prevent fraud." Maria nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. "They researched you too, Maria. Your history, your background." David opened the folder. "And they found something I need to tell you about." Maria's stomach dropped. Had she done something wrong? Was there a problem with her permits? "What is it?" David pulled out several documents and photographs. "Your husband, Carlos Torres. He disappeared 3 years ago, correct?" The room temperature seemed to plummet. Maria gripped the bed rail. Sophia gasped. "How do you know about my husband?" Maria whispered. "He was listed in your background check as a missing person. I had my team dig deeper." David's eyes were gentle but serious. "Maria, the same robbery ring that attacked my father and me 20 years ago, they didn't stop. They continued operating for years." Maria's heart began to pound. They targeted men traveling alone for business. Specifically, men who looked vulnerable, who might be carrying cash or valuables. David paused. 3 years ago, they ambushed a man driving from Chicago to Milwaukee. A man matching your husband's description. "No," Maria breathed. "The FBI raided their operation 6 weeks ago. They found records, photographs, evidence of dozens of crimes over 2 decades. David pulled out a photo and placed it face down on the table. "Maria, I need to show you something, but I want you to prepare yourself." Sophia moved closer to her mother. Ruth reached for Maria's other hand. With trembling fingers, Maria nodded. David turned over the photograph. It showed a man, thin, bearded, older than she remembered, but unmistakable. Carlos. Her Carlos. Alive. Maria's vision blurred. The room tilted. Where is he? Is he alive? Please tell me he's alive. He's alive, David said quickly. He's in a recovery facility in Wisconsin. He was held captive for 3 years. When the FBI raided, they found him and 4 other men in terrible conditions. Malnourished, traumatized, but alive. Sophia sobbed openly. My father is alive. He's been asking about you, David continued softly. Both of you. It's how my investigators confirmed his identity. He kept repeating 2 names, Maria and Sophia. Maria couldn't breathe. 3 years. 3 years she believed he was dead or had abandoned them. 3 years of struggling alone, of watching Sophia cry herself to sleep, of wondering what she'd done wrong. Why didn't someone tell me? She managed. The FBI only identified him 2 weeks ago. They've been working to locate families. Your case file was buried in bureaucracy. If my team hadn't been specifically looking. David trailed off. Can I see him? Maria asked desperately. Can we see him? I've already arranged it. There's a helicopter waiting on the roof. We can be there in 90 minutes. Maria looked at Sophia, whose face was a mixture of joy, disbelief, and fear. Mama, is this real? I think so, baby. I think so. Ruth squeezed Maria's hand. Go. Go to your husband. David will stay with me. Are you sure? Maria asked. I've waited 20 years for my son. I can wait a few more hours. Ruth smiled through tears. Go bring your family back together. The helicopter ride was surreal. Maria had never been in a helicopter. Sophia pressed her face to the window, watching Chicago disappear below them. But Maria couldn't focus on anything except one thought. Carlos is alive. The recovery facility was a converted hospital in rural Wisconsin. David had called ahead, and staff were waiting when they landed. A counselor met them in the lobby. Mrs. Torres? I'm Dr. Ellen Warner. I've been working with your husband. How is he? Maria asked immediately. Physically, he's recovering well. Emotionally, it's more complex. He experienced severe trauma. 3 years of captivity causes profound psychological damage. But he knows us. He remembers us. Dr. Warner smiled gently. He talks about you both constantly. You've been what's kept him fighting to recover. They walked down a corridor, and with each step, Maria's heart beat faster. What would she say? Would he still be the same man? Would he even recognize her? Dr. Warner stopped at a door. He's in here. I'll give you privacy. But please take it slow. This will be overwhelming for all of you. She opened the door. The man sitting by the window turned. Thinner, grayer, with haunted eyes. But him. Definitely him. Carlos, Maria whispered. He stood slowly, as if afraid he was hallucinating. Maria? Daddy. Sophia's voice cracked. Carlos's face crumpled. My girls. My beautiful girls. And then they were running to each other, colliding in the middle of the room, holding each other like they'd never let go again. Carlos held Maria and Sophia like they might disappear if he loosened his grip. His whole body shook with sobs, deep, wrenching sounds that came from a place of profound pain and relief. I'm sorry, he kept repeating. I'm so sorry. I tried to come home. I tried so hard. Shoo, Maria whispered, stroking his hair. You're here now. That's all that matters. They stood like that for a long time, just holding each other, crying, occasionally pulling back to look at each other's faces before embracing again. Finally, they moved to the couch, sitting close together. Carlos couldn't stop touching them. Maria's hand, Sophia's hair, as if confirming they were real. Tell me everything, he said, his voice hoarse. Tell me about your lives. I missed 3 years. 3 years of watching Sophia grow up. 3 years of being there for you. Sophia, who had been mostly silent, found her voice. Daddy, I'm 15 now. I'm in 10th grade. I want to be a doctor. Carlos's eyes filled with fresh tears. A doctor. My little girl wants to be a doctor. And she will be, Maria added. We have help now. Financial help. It's a long story, but Sophia's education is secured. How? Carlos looked between them, confused. Maria took a deep breath. A lot has happened. Let me start from the beginning. She told him about Ruth, about feeding her for 6 months, about David's arrival that morning. As she spoke, Carlos's expression cycled through disbelief, wonder, and amazement. So, the woman you were feeding, she was the mother of a billionaire? I didn't know. I just saw someone who needed help. Carlos took Maria's face in his hands. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. The kindest person I've ever known. Tell us what happened to you, Sophia said softly. If you can. Carlos took a shaky breath. I was driving to Milwaukee for a job interview. Remember? That construction foreman position. Maria nodded. She remembered. They'd been so hopeful that job would change their situation. They forced me off the road about 40 miles outside the city. 3 men, armed. They threw me in a van, blindfolded me, drove for hours. When they removed the blindfold, I was in a basement somewhere. There were 4 other men already there. Why do they keep you? Maria asked. Why not just rob you and let you go? They used us for labor, illegal operations, moving stolen goods. We were slaves, essentially. They threatened to kill our families if we didn't cooperate. They showed me pictures of you and Sophia. Said they knew where you lived, where Sophia went to school. Maria felt sick. Oh, Carlos. So I did what they said. I worked. I hoped. I prayed someone would find us. His voice dropped. 2 of the men died while I was there. One from pneumonia. One who tried to escape. They beat him to death. Sophia covered her mouth, crying. I kept going because of you too. Every morning, I pictured Sophia's smile. Your voice. That's what kept me alive. They sat in heavy silence for a moment. The FBI agent who's been working my case, Carlos continued. She said if David Chin's investigators hadn't flagged my file to them, it might have taken months more to locate you. Maybe longer. He looked at Maria intently. Your kindness to Ruth didn't just save her life. It saved mine too. It's all connected, Maria whispered, amazed. Dr. Warner knocked gently and entered. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Carlos needs to rest. This is his first visitor session, and we need to monitor his vitals. When can I leave? Carlos asked immediately. When can I go home? Dr. Warner's expression was kind but firm. We're recommending another 4 weeks of treatment. Physical therapy for the muscle loss. Counseling for the trauma. We want to make sure you're truly ready. For weeks. Carlos looked devastated. We'll visit every day, Maria said quickly. Sophia and I. Every single day. Right, baby? Sophia nodded vigorously. Every day, Daddy. I promise. And, Maria added, thinking quickly, you should rest and get strong. Because when you come home, everything will be different. We'll have a restaurant. A real home. A new start for all of us. Carlos managed a weak smile. A restaurant? My Maria, running a restaurant. Your Maria, who's been running a taco cart for 8 years, she corrected with a smile. Just an upgrade. Before they left, Carlos pulled Maria aside. Is this real? Or am I dreaming? Because I had dreams like this in that basement. Dreams where you came and saved me. And then I'd wake up and still be there. Maria took his face in her hands. This is real. I'm real. Sophia is real. And in 4 weeks, we're bringing you home. I promise. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Maria split her time between visiting Carlos in Wisconsin, running her taco cart, and overseeing the construction of her new restaurant. David had hired the best construction crew in Chicago. The old lot was transformed before her eyes. Foundation poured, walls erected, plumbing and electrical installed. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Commercial-grade stoves, walk-in refrigerator, stainless steel prep stations. This is too much, Maria kept saying. This is exactly right, David would reply. Ruth had moved into David's guest house, a small place that was actually larger than any home Maria had ever lived in. But despite the luxury, Ruth insisted on coming to visit the construction site weekly. I want to see the miracle growing, she'd say. Sophia threw herself into her studies with renewed purpose. Her father was alive. Her family would be together again. Her education was secured. Everything felt possible now. But not everything was easy. 4 weeks into construction, Maria received a call from an unknown number. Is this Maria Torres? Yes, who's calling? My name is Linda Morrison. I'm James Morrison's wife, the man who adopted David Chun. Maria's chest tightened. Oh, hello. I need to meet with you. Today, if possible. It's the next 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Maria split her time between visiting Carlos in Wisconsin, running her taco cart, and overseeing the construction of her new restaurant. David had hired the best construction crew in Chicago. The old lot was transformed before her eyes. Foundation poured, walls erected, plumbing and electrical installed. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Commercial-grade stoves, walk-in refrigerator, stainless steel prep stations. "This is too much," Maria kept saying. "This is exactly right," David would reply. Ruth had moved into David's guest house, a small place that was actually larger than any home Maria had ever lived in. But despite the luxury, Ruth insisted on coming to visit the construction site weekly. "I want to see the miracle growing," she'd say. Sophia threw herself into her studies with renewed purpose. Her father was alive. Her family would be together again. Her education was secured. Everything felt possible now. But not everything was easy. 4 weeks into construction, Maria received a call from an unknown number. "Is this Maria Torres?" "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Linda Morrison. I'm James Morrison's wife, the man who adopted David Chun." Maria's chest tightened. "Oh, hello. I need to meet with you. Today, if possible. It's urgent." They met at a coffee shop near the construction site. Linda Morrison was an elegant woman in her 60s, with silver hair and worried eyes. She ordered nothing, just sat with her hands clasped tightly on the table. "Thank you for meeting me," Linda began. "I don't know how to say this delicately, so I'll be direct. You need to be careful with David." Maria frowned. "Careful? What do you mean?" "My husband, James, he passed away 2 months ago. Heart attack." Linda's voice trembled. "Before he died, he told me things. Things about David's adoption that I never knew." "I don't understand." Linda pulled out a folder, her hands shaking. "James didn't just find David by chance at that hospital. He was looking for him. Specifically for him." Maria's stomach nodded. "What?" 20 years ago, James worked for a shipping company. The same company that Robert Chun, David's father, owned a contract with. When Robert died, that contract was worth millions. It went into a trust for David, but since David was presumed dead, the money was frozen. "What are you saying?" "James knew David was alive. He'd seen him at the hospital. He adopted him, gave him a new identity, raised him, but he never told David who he really was. Never told him about the trust fund. Never helped him find his real family." Maria felt cold. "But why?" "Control. James was obsessed with building a business empire. He used David's intelligence, his work ethic, to build the Morrison Tech Company. Every patent, every innovation that made them wealthy. That was David's mind, but James's name on the documents. Does David know this? No. I don't know if he should. James did love David, in his way. He educated him, gave him opportunities. But he also used him." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "And now David's trying to make up for lost time with Ruth by giving away millions. I'm worried." "Worried about what?" "That he's acting out of guilt. That he's not thinking clearly. That people might take advantage of him." Linda looked directly at Maria. "People like you." The words hit like a slap. Maria stood abruptly. "I never asked for anything. I fed Ruth because it was the right thing to do. That's all." "I believe you," Linda said quickly. "I do. But you need to understand, David has abandonment issues. He attaches quickly to people who show him kindness. And sometimes that makes him vulnerable." Maria sat back down slowly. "What do you want from me?" "Just be careful with his heart. He's a good man, but he's also broken in ways he doesn't even understand yet." After Linda left, Maria sat in the coffee shop for a long time, staring at her cold tea. Was she taking advantage of David? She'd accepted the restaurant, the money for Sophia's education. Was that wrong? Her phone rang. It was David. "Maria, great news. The health inspector approved the kitchen early. We could do a soft opening next week instead of waiting another 2 weeks. And Carlos is being discharged tomorrow, 4 days early." The doctors are amazed at his progress. His enthusiasm was infectious. Maria found herself smiling despite her troubled thoughts. "That's wonderful news. We should celebrate. Dinner tonight? You, Sophia, Ruth, and me. Like family. Like family." The words warmed her heart, but also made Linda's warnings echo louder. "David," Maria said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Anything." Why are you doing all this? Really? There was a long pause. When David spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, more vulnerable. Because for 20 years, I had success, but not purpose. Money, but not meaning. The moment I found my mother, everything clicked into place. And you show me what real goodness looks like. Not charity for tax breaks or photo opportunities. Just pure human kindness. He paused. You gave me back my family. I'm trying to give you back yours. Maria's eyes stung with tears. Linda might be right that David had issues to work through. But his heart was genuine. Dinner sounds perfect, she said softly. We'll be there. The morning Carlos was discharged felt like Christmas and a wedding day combined. Sophia woke up at 5, too excited to sleep. Maria had cleaned their tiny apartment 3 times, even though they'd soon be moving to a larger place David had arranged near the restaurant. David insisted on picking them up personally. The drive to Wisconsin was filled with nervous chatter. Sophia practicing what she'd say, Maria worrying if Carlos would feel overwhelmed. He's going to be fine, David assured them. Dr. Warner says he's made remarkable progress. When they arrived, Carlos was sitting in the facilities garden, dressed in new clothes David had sent ahead. He looked better, healthier, with more color in his face, but still too thin, with shadows in his eyes that might never fully disappear. The moment he saw them, though, those shadows lightened. He stood, and Sophia ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist. Careful, Majida, Carlos laughed. I'm still a little fragile. I don't care. I'm never letting go. Maria approached more slowly, suddenly shy. They'd visited dozens of times, but bringing him home felt different. More real, more permanent. Carlos held out his hand to her. Mi amor, take me home. The drive back was quieter. Carlos stared out the window like he was seeing the world for the first time. In a way, he was the first time as a free man in 3 years. When they reached Chicago, David made an unexpected turn. This isn't the way to our apartment, Maria said. I know. David smiled. Small detour. He pulled up in front of the restaurant. The building was finished, gleaming windows, a beautiful sign that read Maria's Place in elegant script, window boxes overflowing with flowers. Carlos stared. This is yours. Ours, Maria corrected, taking his hand. Our new beginning. They got out, and David unlocked the front door. Inside, the restaurant was perfect. Tables set with colorful linens. The kitchen visible through a service window, photographs on the walls, including one of Maria at her old taco cart. The soft opening is in 3 days, David explained. But I thought you should see it first, Carlos. This is what your wife built while you were gone. This is how strong she is. Carlos turned to Maria, tears streaming down his face. You did this. With help, Maria said, gesturing to David. A lot of help. No, David corrected gently. You built this with years of kindness. I just provided the bricks and mortar. Ruth emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray of empanadas. I made these with Sophia this morning. Welcome home, Carlos. Carlos looked overwhelmed. You're David's mother. The woman Maria was feeding. And now we're family, Ruth said simply. All of us. They sat together at the largest table, eating empanadas and drinking café con leche. Carlos kept looking around like he expected to wake up. I dreamed of moments like this, he said quietly. In that basement, I'd imagine us at a table, eating together, laughing. I never thought it would really happen. But it did, Sophia said, squeezing his hand. You're home, Daddy. You're really home. Later, David pulled Maria aside. I need to tell you something. Maria's stomach tightened, remembering Linda's warnings. What is it? I did some more investigating into the robbery ring. The people who took Carlos, who killed my father. David's expression was serious. They're going to trial next month. The prosecutor wants both Carlos and my mother to testify. Will they have to? Not if they don't want to. But it might help put these criminals away for life. Give them closure. Maria nodded slowly. I'll talk to Carlos. But, David, after everything he's been through, I don't want to push him. Of course not. The decision is entirely his. David paused. There's something else. The defense attorneys are claiming their clients were never properly identified. They're suggesting that maybe the FBI has the wrong people. What? That's insane. They found Carlos and the others in their hideout. I know, but they're trying to create reasonable doubt. If Carlos and my mother can identify them positively, it would seal the case. Maria rubbed her temples. Let me talk to him. And Ruth. They deserve to know. That evening, after David left and Ruth returned to the guest house, Maria and Carlos sat on their old couch with Sophia between them. Their tiny apartment had never felt more like home. There's something we need to discuss, Maria began. She explained about the trial, the testimony, the defense's tactics. Carlos was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I want to do it. Carlos, are you sure? You don't have to face them again. Yes, I do. His voice was firm. Those men stole 3 years of my life. They killed David's father. They've destroyed countless families. If my testimony can make sure they never hurt anyone else, then I have to do it. Sophia hugged him tighter. I'm proud of you, Daddy. Me too, Maria whispered. Carlos looked at his wife, his daughter, their humble home. They took my freedom, but they didn't take what matters. They didn't take my family. And now I'm going to make sure they can't take anyone else's. The morning of Maria's Place grand opening arrived with perfect weather. Sunny skies, gentle breeze, and an air of celebration that seemed to hover over Riverside Market. Word had spread throughout the neighborhood and beyond. The local news had picked up the story. Taco car vendor gets dream restaurant after feeding homeless woman who was billionaire's lost mother. It was the kind of heartwarming story Chicago needed. By 9 a.m., a line had formed outside. Neighbors, reporters, curiosity seekers, and genuinely hungry people all waiting to be part of something special. Inside, Maria stood in her gleaming kitchen, wearing a chef's coat with her name embroidered on it. Her hands trembled as she checked the preparation stations for the 100th time. Mama, everything is perfect, Sophia assured her. Sophia wore a server's uniform, ready to help despite David's insistence that they hire enough staff. What if the food isn't good enough? Maria worried. What if people came because of the story but hate the food? Carlos appeared behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. He'd gained back some weight and looked more like himself every day. Your food has always been good enough. That's why people came to your car in the rain, in the snow, in the heat. They came for you. Ruth entered through the back door, carrying fresh flowers. The ribbon-cutting ceremony is ready. Are you? Maria took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Outside, David stood at a podium with a microphone. A small crowd had gathered, city officials, local business owners, press with cameras. Thank you all for coming, David began. 6 months ago, I was a successful businessman who had everything except the thing that mattered most, family. Then I found my mother, Ruth Chun, alive after 20 years. And I found her because of one woman's incredible kindness. He gestured to Maria, who stood beside Ruth and Carlos, feeling overwhelmed. Maria Torres didn't know my mother was related to anyone important. She just saw a human being who needed help. Every day, for 6 months, she fed my mother, gave her dignity, gave her hope. Today, we celebrate not just a restaurant opening, but the power of simple human kindness to change lives. The crowd applauded. Someone shouted, "We love you, Maria." Ruth stepped forward to the ribbon stretched across the doorway. She held large ceremonial scissors, but reached for Maria's hand. Together, Ruth insisted. With tears streaming down both their faces, they cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted in cheers. The doors opened, and people flooded in. Every table filled within minutes. Orders poured in. The kitchen became a beautiful chaos of sizzling pans, shouted orders, and the incredible smell of Maria's cooking. Sophia moved between tables with practiced ease, taking orders, delivering plates, chatting with customers. Carlos helped where he could, though he still tired easily. Maria cooked like she'd been doing it in this kitchen for years instead of hours. Tacos, enchiladas, tamales, pozole, all the recipes she perfected on her humble cart, now elevated by professional equipment and fresh ingredients. A woman at table 7 started crying after her first bite. "This tastes like my grandmother's cooking," she said. "Like love tastes." By noon, they'd served over 100 people. The line outside hadn't shrunk. David worked the crowd, greeting people, thanking them for coming. But Maria noticed him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride, certainly, but something else too. During a brief lull, he approached her in the kitchen. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." They stepped into the small office. David closed the door and turned to her, suddenly looking nervous in a way she'd never seen. "I need to tell you something," he began, "and I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't want this to change anything between us if you're not comfortable." Maria's heart began to race. "What is it?" "You changed my life, Maria, not just by helping my mother. You showed me what real integrity looks like, what kindness without agenda looks like." He paused. "I've been thinking about what comes next for me. The business feels empty now. Making more money feels pointless." "David, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to do more of this. More restaurants for people who deserve a chance. More investigations to reunite families. I want to build something that matters." He took a deep breath. "And I want you to be part of it. Not as someone I'm helping, but as a partner." Maria stared at him. "A partner? A business partner? Help me identify people with talent and heart who just need an opportunity. Use your instincts, your understanding of struggle and perseverance. Together, we could change hundreds of lives." I don't know anything about running a charity. This wouldn't be a charity. This would be investing in people. Real businesses. Real opportunities." He smiled. "You already proved the concept. Your success story. Help me create more." Before Maria could respond, Sophia burst into the office. "Mama, the mayor is here. The actual mayor wants to meet you." David laughed. "We'll talk more later. Go meet your public partner." He said it so casually, partner, like it was already decided. And maybe, Maria thought, as she followed Sophia back to the dining room, maybe it was. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The mayor praised her publicly. News cameras interviewed her. Customers kept coming until they finally closed at 9 p.m., completely sold out of food. As the last customers left, the core group gathered: Maria, Carlos, Sophia, David, and Ruth. They sat at the largest table, exhausted and happy. To new beginnings, David toasted with sparkling cider. To family, Ruth added. To kindness, Sophia said. To my incredible wife, Carlos said, squeezing Maria's hand. Maria looked around the table at these people who'd become her family through the most unlikely circumstances. 6 months ago, she'd been a struggling taco car vendor. Now she had a thriving restaurant, her husband back, her daughter's future secured, and a new purpose forming. To second chances, Maria said softly, for all of us. 3 years after the grand opening, Maria's place had become an institution. But it wasn't just one restaurant anymore. It was 5 spread across Chicago, each one managed by someone with a story similar to Maria's. David had made good on his partnership offer. Together, they'd created the Second Chance Initiative, identifying people with talent, heart, and unfortunate circumstances, then giving them the resources to build real businesses. There was Marcus, a former homeless veteran now running a bakery. Yolanda, a single mother who'd survived domestic violence, now operating a catering company. Each success story was carefully chosen, properly supported, and genuinely transformational. But today was special for a different reason. Maria stood in the original restaurant, now decorated with white flowers and silver ribbons. Chairs had been arranged in rows, facing an archway covered in roses. Mama, stop fussing with my dress, Sophia laughed. It's perfect. Sophia, now 20 years old and in her second year of medical school, looked radiant in a simple white gown. Her hair was swept up, tiny flowers woven through it. I can't believe my baby is getting married, Maria said, tears already forming. I'm not a baby anymore. Sophia hugged her mother tightly. But I'll always be your daughter. Carlos appeared in the doorway, handsome in his suit. He'd fully recovered, put on healthy weight, and now helped manage the business side of Maria's restaurants. The shadows in his eyes had softened, though they'd never completely disappear. They're ready for you, mi amor, he said to Sophia. Ruth entered, elegant in a lavender dress. At 76, she was healthy, happy, and actively involved in the Second Chance Initiative, often visiting prospective candidates to share her own story. The groom is a nervous wreck, Ruth reported with a smile. It's adorable. Sophia grinned. David gets nervous? Only about things that really matter. Yes, David. Sophia and David had grown close over the years, but no one had seen romance coming until it was suddenly obvious to everyone. He was 20 years older, but they fit together in a way that transcended age. Two people who understood loss, valued family, and believed in using their blessings to bless others. When David had asked Carlos for Sophia's hand, Carlos had cried, "You gave me back my life. How can I say anything but yes?" Now, Maria watched her daughter prepare to marry the man who'd changed all their lives. The music started. Sophia took Carlos's arm. "Ready, Daddy?" "No," Carlos admitted, "but let's do it anyway." They walked down the makeshift aisle. Guests stood, friend from a neighborhood, staff from all 5 restaurants, people whose lives the Second Chance Initiative had touched. And there, standing under the archway, was David. When he saw Sophia, his face transformed with so much love that Maria had to look away, crying too hard to see. The ceremony was beautiful and simple. They wrote their own vows. "You taught me that kindness isn't weakness," David said. "You showed me that strength comes from caring, not from walls. You made me believe in family again, not just the one I lost, but the one we're building together." Sophia's voice shook but stayed strong. "You could have given us money and walked away. Instead, you gave us yourself. You became the uncle I never had, then the friend I always needed, then the love I never expected. You proved that miracles are real." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the restaurant erupted in cheers. At the reception, Maria found herself standing beside Ruth, watching Sophia and David dance. "Can you believe this?" Maria whispered. "Sometimes I think I'll wake up and still be pushing that taco cart." "It's real," Ruth assured her. "All of it. The restaurant, the initiative, the family we've built. It's all real. Because I gave you some tacos?" Ruth turned to her, serious now. "Because you saw me. When everyone else looked through me or around me, you saw me. You treated me like a human being who mattered. That's not small, Maria. That's everything." They hugged, these two women whose chance meeting had rippled into so many changed lives. Later, David pulled Maria aside. "I have something for you." He handed her a folder. Inside were architectural plans. "What is this?" "A training center for the Second Chance Initiative. A place where people can learn restaurant management, business skills, financial literacy, everything they need to succeed." He pointed to the name on the plans, the Maria and Ruth Center for New Beginnings. Maria couldn't speak. She just cried and hugged him. "Thank you," she finally managed. "For everything. For seeing potential where others saw problems. You taught me that," David said simply. As evening fell, Maria stood outside the restaurant. Her restaurant, watching through the window. Carlos laughing with Marcus the baker. Ruth dancing with Sophia. The community they'd built, the lives they'd touched, the love they'd multiplied. She thought about that morning 3 years ago when the SUVs had appeared. How terrified she'd been. How impossible everything had seemed. She thought about every meal she'd given Ruth, never imagining where it would lead. And she understood, finally, deeply, that kindness was never wasted. Every small act of love rippled outward in ways you couldn't predict or control. You just had to trust that doing good would create good. A hand slipped into hers. "Carlos, what are you thinking?" he asked. Maria smiled through happy tears. "That we're the luckiest people in the world. Because of the restaurant, the money." "No." She turned to face him. "Because we learned what really matters. Family, love, kindness. Everything else is just extra." Inside, the party continued. Sophia threw her bouquet, and one of the Second Chance Initiative's newest participants caught it, squealing with delight. The music played. People danced. And above it all, written in large letters across the wall, was the motto that had come to define everything they built. Kindness always comes home. The end. Folded hands, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Did this story touch your heart? Please like, subscribe, And hit that notification bell for more inspiring stories that celebrate the power of kindness, family, and second chances. Speech Balloon, we'd love to hear from you. Comment below. Where are you watching from? What was your favorite moment? Have you ever experienced or witnessed an act of kindness that changed everything? Loudspeaker, share this story with someone who needs hope today. You never know whose life you might change by spreading this message. Glowing Star, remember, your acts of kindness matter. They ripple out in ways you may never see, but they matter. Be like Maria. See people. Help people. Change the world one kind act at a time. Sparkles, God bless you all, and thank you for being part of our community. Subscribe now for more uplifting stories every week. Sparkles ***.